Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 2 of Undoctrinate. As usual, I'm your host, Chev, and I have several co-hosts today and a very special guest host with us today. So let's go around. We'll introduce the two from last time. So first, Dan, welcome.
Hello.
And Dakota, welcome.
Hello.
And then lastly with us today, this is the coronavirus show. We decided to get the big elephant out of the room. In the room out of the way right off the bat. So we have a friend from one of our Discord servers he's an epidemiologist. And I'm sorry, what did you say you wanted to be introduced as? I'm totally blanking.
Micah. Hey, everybody.
Micah. Welcome, Micah. We are super happy to have you. I've been excited to have this conversation for a while, just to have someone who knows what they're talking about when it comes to the actual science surrounding this whole thing. So I guess first we'll just get started. Everybody knows about the pandemic. Everybody knows what happened last March and how it's just been a giant, crap show ever since. And we're going to definitely talk today about a lot of the theories that people have around stuff, the conspiracy theories and misinformation and all that stuff. But we'll get to that first. Micah, is there anything you wanted to cover with us specifically? You have any cool science for us that would be fun for us to know about? Teach us a little bit about this thing before we dive in.
Sure thing. So I do want to preface with, in terms of knowing all about this virus, no one really can at this point. It's still, despite it being almost a year on, despite us having all the genetic sequencing done, it is still a rather new disease, and we're learning more and more about it every day. So anything I do say, I say with the caveat of this may change in the near future. So I do want to get that caveat out of the way first. But sure, in terms of what is COVID, what is SARS-CoV-2? So COVID is caused by the SARS-CoV-2 virus, which, as the name might, lead people to believe, is closely related to SARS, which is also closely related to MERS, which are all under the kind of umbrella of coronaviruses. And these coronaviruses are called that because kind of, how your background alludes to, it looks like the virus actually has a crown around it. And Coronaviruses aren't typically rare. There's about 3,000 of them last time I checked. There's probably a couple more because they tend to tack on, new variants every couple of years. And they range from these wildly sophisticated diseases like MERS and SARS and, what we're seeing in COVID, to what amounts to something that you wouldn't even notice being different than a common cold or maybe seasonal allergies. And COVID itself belongs to this class called beta coronaviruses. Now, beta coronaviruses themselves are, I don't know how to properly phrase this, but I'm going to go with majestic. Because they can find these ways to adapt to whatever their host is, like any virus can, but they do it quickly and effectively, and they do it in such a simple manner of only using the spike protein subunits to really latch on to the cells of, in this case, human or most mammal bodies. Actually, we're kind of finding out now, thanks to Denmark for letting us know that minks are no longer safe. But I digress. These little simple changes in this virus can lead itself to do vastly different things in vastly different, circumstances. And it's fascinating to see because in many cases, it takes a long time for a virus or bacteria to really find its niche and really go for it. But coronaviruses are highly mutagenic. They adapt quickly. And what's fascinating is seeing, everyone's afraid of it becoming more lethal. And there are, some arguments to be said that might happen someday. But what we are seeing right now is it's actually becoming more transmissible because, as most organisms are trying to do, it tries to survive, it tries to reproduce, it tries to do all the things that you would imagine a higher order organism to do. And it's just, from a virological point of view, it's fascinating to watch. And then from an epidemiological point of view, it's terrifying. Because while there is this, I don't want to say smart because it doesn't have intelligence. It's not, a thinking, feeling being. It's this incredibly well-adapted virus that is going through communities, going through societies, going through the entire planet, which itself is not terribly well adapted to dealing with it. So it's this, it's been since January, this really fascinating journey of, starting out it was, oh, well, this is like SARS or MERS. So cool. We have like a couple dudes in a trailer. We'll give them Netflix. We'll give them Uber Eats. And we keep them at home, for as long as possible, and they'll recover. And cool, we'll send them out. Going from that to, oh God, this is a pandemic. This is the real deal. Has just been a wild ride. And I know I diverted a couple of times in that statement, but I kind of wanted to give kind of an overview of.
No worries. When we say the one word that we say all the time that I think actually maybe people even take for granted is pandemic. What does that even mean? What does it mean for something to even reach pandemic status? What is all that?
Okay, I actually love this question a lot because there are actually 3 stages to a disease. The first one is endemic. So if you have a disease that's kind of in a community and it always kind of is there, but doesn't really do anything too big or too bad, we usually call that endemic, where it's run aground into a community. And then we have an epidemic. Now, an epidemic is when it starts crossing boundaries you wouldn't really expect it to cross. It's doing something a little unusual, something a little more worrisome. It might cross country boundaries or state boundaries. And the most common example of this is measles outbreaks in the United States. They're usually epidemics. Okay. And those are sometimes, depending on who you talk to, and it's kind of an interesting field in that way because there's a lot of subjectivity around terminology. But an epidemic can be as little as 2 people. It can be as many as thousands. It really depends on what the virus is, or bacteria or whatever else is going on. And then you have pandemic. Pandemic basically means everywhere in the world, you're either running a very high risk of getting it or it's already there. It is that a disease has saturated, every airport, ship port, anything, anywhere a human can be, so can this virus or, bacteria or other disease. Right. And so that's kind of a quick breakdown of endemic, epidemic, and pandemic.
Gotcha. Thank you. Yeah, that's very educational. Even I didn't even know all the definitions or all the different stages that everything went through. But I think that's important to understand when we say, the pandemic. It's actually a status. It's not just a word that's, it almost sounds like panic, but this just means that this virus has adapted to its environment in such a way that it is sweeping the world. It's it's dormant long enough for you to infect people without knowing. It's just kind of adapted the perfect mechanism to get through our society, and so it's nice to be able to talk about the actual science behind it. But Micah, isn't that all just your opinion?
Yeah, sure. It's just my opinion and my couple years of schooling, and before that, my entire undergraduate career, and about 1,000 of my colleagues. Who just work in my subsection alone, and then the hundreds of thousands of people who are also working in this, with related fields. Totally. It's just all of us, a giant cabal of lizard people. If you look very closely, I blink. I don't know if you can see it, but it actually goes this way instead of that way. Goes vertically instead of horizontally. We're totally this giant cabal that works with NASA, by the way, which is why anyone who goes to the end of the Earth, the flat end, we give them COVID to then spread the community, so that way no one knows about it.
We joke, but I wanted to bring that up because I do think it's interesting how people kind of forget that people are behind the science. It's not just some, corporation. Like people go to school for this, as you have. You are an epidemiologist. You understand this stuff. You study it. And people I feel like a lot of people tend to forget that there are actually people out there looking at the virus. Like they can literally see the virus. They're studying it. You're trying to figure out exactly how it attacks the body and exactly, what it's going to take to create a vaccine for it and all that good stuff. And people just think it's just, we just made it somewhere in some secret lab. It's like if you had the tools right now, you could find the virus, isolate it, and put it under a microscope.
It's like Area 51. Someone just made it up.
Someone was playing Plague Inc. on Area 51 and decided to hit submit a little early. Yeah, and actually there's another point to be made, is that it's not just us. It's generations of people before us. And ironically, it's a lot of generations of people before us who also had to deal with the same level of misinformation or the same level of confusion or uncertainty. Because as much as we like to think we've advanced so far, and we have in many ways, we're still essentially, apes with severe anxiety and existential dread, shaved, and then thrown into a circumstance which we don't understand.
I feel so attacked right now.
No, it's true. I mean, we just have to look around and examine our environment, and this is just the objective reality that we are stuck in. Nobody likes it, and it's hard to watch a lot of society try to rebel against what is literally just reality. And I'll talk more in a little bit about some of those conspiracy theories, because I have some specific things that a friend of mine has just put forward that I find interesting, but I'm sure it doesn't make you feel very good when people just act like everything you've studied and everything you've done must not exist, or you're complicit somehow, or you name it.
They paid you off, yeah.
Oh,
so you said, oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, yeah, that does suck, because I've been working. I think this pay period alone, I'm going over 120 hours. And that's the norm now. That's literally it. I can't, chill with my dog as much as I feel bad
for chewing up some of your time.
No. This is cool. But it's the reality of the situation. And, I come back from that, and I used to have Facebook. I don't anymore, because I got death threats because, oh, well, you're part of them. And it's like, no, I'm not. I'm literally trying to help.
Jeez.
And to a degree, it's okay. And here's why. So in terms of people dealing with disasters, because before I was an epidemiologist, I worked primarily in disaster zones. That was my jam. There's this thing that happens to the human mind, to many human minds, when faced with a disaster. And they'll have this upswing real quick of, oh, these heroes are out here every day. Let's clap for them in the streets. By the way, don't do that. It's irritating at best, because most of us have headaches when we're going home. But there's this huge community upswell of everything's going to be okay. Unfortunately, it doesn't usually sync up when things are actually going to be okay. And people begin to degrade and go, okay, well, seriously, how much longer? Okay, but seriously, how much longer? And eventually they go, you know what? I can't take this anymore. I can't. This isn't normal. And they're right. It's not normal. And they'll get frustrated, and they'll sometimes act out in sometimes very dumb ways. And these can be very smart people. And you'll see people protest the measures as if they're not there to shorten this entire thing, or they'll act like the virus doesn't exist anymore because they just don't want it to. And to a degree, I can empathize with that. There's nothing more than I would like than to take 2 weeks of vacation and just forget the rest of civilization existed. Forget COVID. I want nothing to do with any human not in the direct vicinity of me. But I can't. And unfortunately, these individuals who do want to do that, I mean, ultimately, they can't either. You can't wish away a virus. But I do want to point out the fact that that acting out, that that irritation and that frustration is perfectly valid. It's just we're all in this, and unfortunately, we just have to
take that frustration and channel it into taking care of each other.
Exactly.
Can't throw a fit in Walmart, or go around spreading misinformation, or people's lives are at stake. My grandfather just died 2 weeks ago now, on the 14th. And then my father-in-law now is in the hospital, and he's looking like he's probably going to be okay, but we don't know. He's taking in too much oxygen right now for them to send him home. And so he's stable, he's not getting worse, and he can taste again, but the virus is just now peaking, and we don't know what his lungs are going to look like in the end. So it's scary. It's really hard. And then now that I've had it hit closer to home a couple times, it starts to get under my skin more, and I can't help but have a knee-jerk reaction, which I know that it adds to the whole us versus them type of mentality. We just started going back and forth and all that, but sometimes it's really hard to watch people make decisions that are mistakes and put people at risk and not take it serious. It's like if you were, if you were an oppressed person in some society that's hunting for you and your family, there's numerous examples throughout history. Pick one, where you are trying to survive. The situation sucks, but you can't just pretend it's not happening. You have to continue to do whatever it takes to protect yourself and the people you care about, even no matter how bad it sucks. And that's one thing that I think, this country for some reason has a real hard time doing, which is why this exists. This is what the podcast is born out of, because my knee-jerk reaction is to spew vitriol at people. It is cathartic to watch them get justice when society comes down on them for not wearing their mask or whatever. And it's a little bit like you get a little bit of that feeling of Schadenfreude, or however you pronounce that word. And and I understand that completely, but I feel like we have to rise above it. We have to do something. This is my attempt to do something to help educate people. But spreading misinformation and stuff at a time like this is, if you are not studying the science and you don't understand it and you think it's false, you are actually being worse than ignorant by spreading that information around and trying to tell people that it's not real, or it's trying to control you or whatever. Go ahead.
I get the point that you're trying to make. I would caution against the phrase "worse than ignorant," because, like we discussed last episode, that would imply that ignorance is a bad thing necessarily.
Well,
yeah,
that's
but
you're right. Well, I'm saying ignorant is not a bad thing.
Right.
You're taking it a step further.
I understand what you're saying, because I know how you feel about that. But just as for other viewers,
we should reiterate what we said last time when we're using the term ignorant on this show. It's literally, ignorance by itself is just innocent. It's you just aren't informed on a topic. That's totally fair. It's when you're uninformed on a topic and you go to try to speak with authority about it that you become more than ignorant. You become
a problem.
Yeah, a problem.
Right.
You're trying to you're just causing a mess, and you're making people feel confused who do want to get real information on what's going on and do the best they can to protect their family. And you're telling them to go, buy some sugar pills at the store that's going to help them get through it. And like literally right now, okay, so it's my father-in-law in the hospital. My sister-in-law is complete anti-vax. She has got tons of misinformation. We could begin to psychoanalyze and go all day. I have no idea why she is this way, but she is. And she is chastising the rest of her family for taking my father-in-law to the hospital where he should be. And he has taken enough oxygen in that he would probably have died had we not taken him to the hospital. And so this is the problem. She's trying to spread misinformation. People spread it to her. She eats it up. She thinks she does research by Googling on the internet, but the problem is I as a programmer can Google a problem with programming with some JavaScript code or whatever, and I can read the answer and I can say, oh, okay, I understand what's going on here. But someone else who doesn't understand JavaScript or programming or any of the concepts involved with it, they don't even know what a variable is, they can Google the same information, but it's just Greek to them. They don't understand it. You'd have to learn what I've gone to school for to learn in order to just be able to understand simple search results. It seems like a no-brainer, but apparently some people think they can just Google and find some blog that agrees with them, and that gives it more weight. Somehow makes it more meaningful to them, even though it's not anything that jives with reality.
That actually that reminds me of it was actually a Reddit post that came through today. As far as when people say they're doing their research, they don't actually understand what they're talking about, because
they don't understand how to research.
Mm-hmm. Well, here's the big thing is that truly understanding a scientific paper takes those years of study, just like Chev said with JavaScript. Like, if you're reading these immunology reports or epidemiology reports, of COVID, and you have a high school biology at best, well, you should let somebody else be the powerhouse of the cell. You are not the mitochondria.
But I like
today.
being a mitochondria.
No. Anyway, Micah, you had a thing.
I certainly did. Sorry. That threw me a little bit, not gonna lie. Right. So there are a couple of things in the discussion that was just had that I would like to point out and would kind of like to expand upon.
Okay.
So the first thing is I find it fascinating a little bit that so early on in this whole deal, we actually did have to communicate and work with anti-vax groups, which was very fascinating to me. Simply because for the first time, they were kind of cooperative with us. They were like, "Oh, masks are great. Social distancing is great. Just don't put anything in our bodies." And we're like, "Okay, we're just gonna ride this out until it works, I guess. But you're cool with us?" And they're like, "Oh yeah. Well, what if a vaccine does come out? Oh, then we're not taking it. Oh, there it is. Okay."
Mm-hmm.
and I would like to point out though, within the anti-vax community, there are some people where I feel that they have at least a claim of legitimacy to their worry and to their fear. And these are these individuals. Within the United States, people of color, truth be told, because historically, the United States Public Health Service and everyone associated with medicine has pretty unanimously screwed over entire populations of people of color, and they did it under the guise of, "Oh, well, this is good for your health," or "Oh, this is okay for you," or
what's
"Oh,
happening Indigenous women's right now. Oh,
yeah, that's a good example. The most famous one is the Tuskegee experiment. So this is something that happened for, I believe, and I'm only working off memory here, so if my dates are a little inaccurate, I do apologize. I believe it was about a 30-year study that studied syphilis within, I believe the exact quote was, within the Negro male. And it was an intentional infection of African-American men within Tuskegee, Alabama with syphilis, and treatment was withheld for decades to show essentially the disease progression of syphilis. Despite there being, penicillin, and despite there being an effective treatment for decades. And they were told, "Oh, well, you've got bad blood, but here, tell you what, we'll pay for your medical treatment," which there wasn't any, but they were, they had blood draws and all that other crap, so that way you could see the disease progression. "And we'll pay for your funeral expenses, because that's expensive and you're poor as hell and you're not going to be able to pay for it to begin with." And that was essentially the deal that was made. And a bunch of people who did not have the ability to really, consent to that because they didn't know what was going on enough to be able to even begin that.
Fun story, briefly aside. Penicillin, actually, the study proving, but the published experiment that showed that it was antibacterial 3 years before the Tuskegee experiment began.
Yeah.
So we knew.
There was no hiding it, no nothing. And the most messed up thing is the lead researcher ended up doing the same thing again in South America, which I forget specifically which country, but he literally just went from Alabama and went, "Oh, well, I'm potentially in legal trouble. Let me go ahead and continue my experiment elsewhere." And he did. So when I say, individuals who are vaccine hesitant are coming from those communities, I'm not going to blame them, truth be told, because you know what? They have no reason to trust me. They have no reason to trust the health system that screwed them over systematically and non-systematically. And while I do desperately want to help them, and I do desperately want them to be in line for the vaccine and getting all the help they need and believing in the science, there is that cultural framework. We do have to negotiate, and we as a country and we as a field don't do well with that. Because, it's not data backed. Well, yeah, but neither was our cruelty. Well, it's not data backed. Well, neither was, the actions that we took so many decades ago that people have told their children about. And that's where, when we do talk about anti-vax, we're thinking mostly, middle-aged white women named Karen with bob cuts and probably a minivan or an SUV and a lot of anger.
Definitely the image that comes to mind. But yeah, those are the more. That's the more of the stereotype that I encounter on a regular basis, and that's the result of Andrew Wakefield's hogwash work. I think it was the early '90s, and so that's. Yep. I've always assumed that was like the primary source where all this came from. I didn't realize there was actually these other causes coming from these these minority communities.
Well, I think what it amounts to is that was the first time you were made aware of it because those people got loud about it, whereas it was kind of an insular thing before.
Gotcha.
Exactly.
Okay.
You let your community know, hey, maybe these people aren't to be trusted.
Yeah, and the Tuskegee.
Whereas when, the stereotype found out about it, they got loud because that's what white people are great at doing, is being loud.
Yeah. Well, I do appreciate that because that does add perspective to even my worldview of
I didn't know that
the
either.
anti-vax community, because obviously I'm privileged. I've never had to deal with anything like that. For me, a vaccine has always been something that's been for the betterment of my health. As far as I'm aware, anyway.
Yeah, and I know last episode you guys were talking a lot about personal truths, or at least a little bit for the segment that I saw.
Yeah,
and that's something that at the personal level, definitely there are personal truths, but there are also community truths, and we need to work with that. In particular, in the light of a pandemic where there's so much unknown, we need to be able to transverse, those huge boundaries that we have intentionally and unintentionally left up, which, I could go on forever about the need for equity and the need for, being able to talk openly.
I'm sure we could have you back on for many more episodes if you're willing.
Sure. But what I'm getting at is that, like, there is a community truth that we also need to be made aware of, that goes sometimes with and sometimes against an objective truth, but it doesn't make it any less of an object that we need to tackle, in a way that is equity minded, in a way that is fair, and in a way that does build up trust, which we as a scientific community can't do very well. And this kind of leads to the second point of people doing their research. Now, to tell this story, I'll tell a bit of a side story because it's fun. So, okay. Going in, I've been primarily working in surveillance epidemiology, and what that is, it's this ability to access, medical records and be able to cross-reference and be able to do all these statistical tests that are really fancy and they give out really cool results. And I can do that. That's great. However, there are other epidemiologists who work really well on the ground. They work, primarily within disease investigation. They're the disease detectives. If you go to cdc.gov and play around with the disease detective game, that's their gig, and they're amazing at it. And then there's this other group of folks, the disease modelers. Now, me being, let's face it, a little arrogant because I've been in this a couple of months, went, oh, well, I can probably build a model based off what we know of the disease and predict the cases. So I tried that. Funny thing, even people who are incredibly well educated, even people who know how to do the research properly, can still get absolutely bamboozled when encountering, something that is completely foreign to them, something that doesn't quite match up to what they're expecting. And they'll use heuristics. They'll use things that they were already kind of aware kind of makes sense, and they'll kind of fit it in where it kind of needs to go. And they'll still end up wrong despite going through it in a way that, to most folks would make sense, and there's a logical, sound argument for it, as long as you don't know better. And that's another thing we do kind of need to address as a scientific community, is being able to address these heuristics and address these kind of not differing narratives, but differing sides to the same narrative in a way that the public can truly consume, in a way that is not going to be full of spin or not going to be full of aggrandizement of a very small feature. And it's just something we need to work on, honestly.
And science PR is awful. It's like every time the media gets a hold of some press release or a white paper, they don't have the skills, just like we talk about how people don't have the skills to just type something into Google and understand everything they see. These media outlets also don't have the skills to actually understand the results of a study, and sometimes the headline is literally the opposite of what the conclusion of the paper is, and it's really hard to get that information out there, have it be exciting, and a lot of times information that comes out that way, and then you go and start reading about it, you realize that it's been sensationalized and it's not as exciting as the headline made it sound. Something that would have been exciting with an accurate headline is now a disappointment to a lot of readers or viewers that have come to find this information. It's like, oh, there really isn't a Harry Potter invisibility cloak. It's just a shiny cloth. That it's like it's a letdown, and it's like, why are we taking something that's pretty cool that we do as a species to progress forward? We make new discoveries, and we're trying to share the information with each other to build a scientific community consensus around what we know about the world, what's objective about the world. And then, we want to make it sensationalize it. Just like we talked about last time, how we don't need to sensationalize Trump, but we still do it anyway. As we still add on all the embellishment and stuff to something that could just easily stand on its own and say, hey, look at this. This is hilarious.
Well, that's certainly true. But so you said earlier that science is a bad PR problem, and it's absolutely true. Mm-hmm. But I think it goes a little bit deeper than that, because unfortunately we live in a society that kind of requires as much attention and as much money as one can get to really succeed. And that's not always necessarily the worst thing in the world, but for science it really is. Mm-hmm. And here's the multi reasons as to why. The first one is, if you want the public to be well informed, you need the papers and the articles and whatever else to be accessible. Now, I don't know how often you guys go to academic literature sites, Nature, Elsevier, paywalls. Exactly. Yep. and it's like $50 for 24-hour access.
Yep.
Dude, I'm cresting six figures and I won't pay that crap. I'm gonna be honest with you. I won't. I will go to a university where I have access still, and I'll go, hey, give me that paper. I'll be sweet. Here you go. I'll be awesome. Thanks.
Now, that being said, do check out your local libraries.
Yes.
Many of them.
100%.
I know it was a godsend through college for me being. Well, I say godsend, but it was a wonderful thing through college for me, still having access to my library from back home that had, I think it was like 27 different academic databases that I had access to.
That's awesome. I had no idea that libraries had granted you access.
Well, that was the thing. I would have not had any idea if it wasn't for one of like two teachers that I had in high school that I would actually count as a teacher as opposed to a underpaid babysitter.
Wow, that actually is cool.
That's way cool.
Yeah, but and they don't advertise it that much. Like I said, I didn't find out from the library. I found out from somebody else. But I guarantee you, your librarian would know.
And that's awesome. And that's way cool. I don't know if you can access that from home or if you have to actually physically be in the library.
Yeah, actually, it was like I could go on, and as long as I had my library card with my library number and all that, boom. Yeah. Log on from anywhere.
On that note, though, I do want to send a major shout out to any librarians ever in existence. They are. If they aren't canonized as saints in whatever religion or non-religion you happen to follow, you're wrong. That is objectively fact. You are wrong if you do not love those people. They are excellent people. Anyways, that's a minor rant done. But yeah, the paywalls is a major issue. And then we have the issue of novel gets funded. So the scientific method of having other people objectively retest your theories, objectively retest your experiments, fact of the matter is, vast majority of studies don't
get retested. Yeah.
No, because it's not sexy. There's no journal for replicative measures. Ooh, that's actually a good name for a journal.
I was just going to start that one. As a Micah original.
Could be.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. We would get absolutely no funding and no one would read us, but we'd be cool. But yeah, that's the other part of it too.
Myth rebusters.
I like it. But that's the other part of it too, is that the scientific method depends a lot on criticism and a lot on replication and a lot on, stuff that hurts. If I'm being completely honest, because being torn to shreds by 5 PhDs as like a lone MPH, I was like, oh, I'm not going to be able to sit for weeks because they have torn my butt up so bad. But it was needed because, like, for that modeling thing that I was talking about earlier, I did a terrible job. Objectively, I sucked. It was bad. I was kind of accurate, but it wasn't enough to be actionable. But from then, they were like, okay, if you're going to be that stupid, you're going to come with us. And we're going to teach you every little detail, and you're going to have to take notes on it for 2 hours a week, every week, until the end of time. And I'll admit, it sucked. But that criticism and that building, it builds a skill set. It builds a product that you can actually work with. And we don't see that a lot in modern science. Now, like, it feels like biotechnology, or, you know, the stuff that's required to do vaccine, you know, distribution and creation, that does have a lot of cross-validation because that's sort of important to do that.
Yeah.
Actually, since you're bringing up the vaccine, I think it would be important to hear from you as more of an expert, just as far as like the reasons why this vaccine, it's not unheard of for it to come out in under a year.
Sure. So I do want to preface this with, I'm not an immunologist. I'm not a virologist. I'm in a related field, but I am not in that field. But here's what we do know. So about 2 weeks after we discovered that SARS-CoV-2 was a thing, officially, although there had been murmurings about it for a couple months, and ProMed Mail, which is this mailing distribution list where if you ever want to just chronically have anxiety for the rest of your life and you don't already have it, I highly recommend you sign up, because you will find every disease outbreak ever going on in the world all the time. Like, my Gmail right now, I think, has somewhere around 10,000 emails, and I'm betting about 8,000 of them are ProMed Mails going, there's a new outbreak. I'm like, oh my God, where? Oh my God, it's anthrax. Oh, it's one cow in Zimbabwe. You.
That sounds like the people who submit tickets at my job. The whole system's down. No, the system's actually fine for me. Oh, well, I can't log in. Oh,
any support ticketing job ever is what that sounds like.
It's the worst. But I say that. So about 2 weeks after COVID-19 was, officially designated as, okay, this is definitely a novel coronavirus, we, and I being the international community, already had, the RNA sequence of the coronavirus, which is unheard of. I want to point that out. Like, that is bananas. That the international community went, oh, that might be a problem. Let's fix that right now. And so they gave what amounts to the source code of the virus to the international community. You could look it up. You can see it at, the letter level right now. And the rest of the world went, oh, that's dope. Oh, God, there are cases here. Okay. and everyone started working real fast on, okay, how do we stop this from getting too much worse? And the beautiful thing about the human race is this. We are lazy, and we really suck at time management, which means we will do absolutely nothing that we don't need to do. But when it is time to do it, oh my God, will we do it? So
that's how I got through school. I waited till the last minute.
Wow.
I got it all done, but
call me out for doing my homework the period before.
Wow.
Well, I mean, really, that's how.
This show is full of personal call-outs.
Well, I mean, that's what I'm good at. But no, the international community all went, okay, cool, let's start working on this. And the fact of the matter is, you get hundreds and hundreds of scientists working together on something. There ain't too much in the world that can be really not fixed. It was done with an urgency and with the money that, I mean, I'll be honest with you, I have seen dollar amounts that I thought were fake. I thought people were pulling out. No, they were not. Hundreds of millions of dollars being tossed into, hey, let's get this fixed right now. And the great part about a lot of funding and a lot of anxious scientists is you will get results. And there were plenty of flops. There were plenty of them that went, oh, that actually killed the animal specimen. Let's not use that one. There were plenty of, hey, that created a weird rash. Let's not do that one. And then you have this one where it's like, well, there's a bit of arm pain, but it protects them pretty well. And yes, they'll need a follow-up booster shot, but that's better than being on a ventilator. So let's go with that one. And it was gone through the FDA. It went through all the safety measures that it needs to go through, and there are plentiful amounts of those. And after all of that, it was made. It was done. And, now there are companies working on distribution of billions of, samples. Billions of vials of this stuff. And it's, it's straining the logistics of every nation, basically, and how to coordinate how to getting this out, except for I think maybe New Zealand, because they're just, ridiculous.
They're just magical, apparently. They were like, pandemic? No, not on our watch.
Right?
It's like, well, let's all listen to each other and
we do not have time for this nonsense. We have drinking to do, not in our homes.
So, funny you mentioned that. I find it really funny that my original home, Ireland, they canceled pints, which is to say all the pubs closed down. The next day, they were working on therapeutics and a vaccine. It was like, ooh, okay, we can't do that anymore. So let's rely on what we've historically been really good at, which is biology and chemistry, and let's just whip this one out.
So since we're talking about virus manufacturing and that whole process, can you tell us at what point during that process they put the chip in that goes into your skin so they can track you?
Oh, okay.
We're going to explode his brain. No more.
No.
We're going to explode the viewer's brain is the problem.
The fact of the matter is I used to have to
or
work
infuriate
on the intelligence unit, and the intelligence unit has to deal with misinformation all the time. So this is all stuff I've heard before. It just hurts every time.
I'm sorry.
Do you guys remember, it was like 10 years ago or something, but there was this new vaccine that came out due to something that, if untreated, could cause cancer in your reproductive system, and they had 3 vaccines. Yes! My mom signed me up for that so fast. The second it came out, she was like, we're going to the doctor right now. And now she's like, I don't know about this COVID vaccine, I was like, bitch, you had me in the doctor that fast.
Yep.
That'll be a perfect bleep though. So.
Yeah, well.
Yeah.
Quack like a duck, Dakota.
Yeah. So there actually is some rationale to that too, oddly enough. But in regards to the chip, there is no chip. If you want, to be paranoid about being monitored, look at whatever device you're listening to this to. Look at it.
That's and I was being funny, but that's the point I wanted to make. Is that I figure we'll debunk the conspiracy theories as you go through the process. There's so many of them, but this one about the chip. I hate that I even have to take it serious for one, but I feel like I've heard it enough times, and I've heard it from someone who I know thinks that it's a real thing. To the point that here's the thing about conspiracy theories. The time at which is appropriate to believe anything at all is when there's evidence for it. So just because you can come up with an idea that could sort of fit the facts and doesn't immediately get debunked by reality or something, you're just saying it could happen. That's not a point at which you should be believing it or putting any stock in it. You would need to back up that idea with evidence and facts and things like that. So just because you can come up with an idea that they're doing something for some nefarious reason, and when somebody tries to tell you why would they do that, and then you try to say, prove me wrong, you can't. That's not how logic works. That's not how, that's the point where if you just believed every conspiracy theory, you'd believe a lot of false things because most of them aren't true, or a lot of them aren't true at the very least. You can't just believe them for no reason. You need to have that extra step of something that's actually concrete to point you toward that conclusion. That's why there's 10 different conspiracy theories about this thing. They just want to come up with something. They don't know what. This just has to be something. It has to be nefarious somehow. It's it's just not following the evidence where it leads. It's having a foregone conclusion and then picking out biased data along the way to support your foregone conclusion.
I wonder why there's such a correlation of Christians and people who don't believe in the virus.
So
that's a whole nother conversation. Go ahead, Mike.
Because I shouldn't say that. Actually, never mind.
and I would.
Good job, Dan. Good job.
Well done. There are okay. Let me try and back this up a little bit.
Okay.
So to debunk the microchip thing, I'll give another example. So we did try to figure out how people move within the communities in which we work. We did try that. However, funny thing, Freedom of Information Act requests are kind of a pain in the butt. And usually, to look as non-sus as possible, we use open source information. And there were open source tools available of, hey, this is kind of the trend of what people carrying around cell phones are doing in these general areas. And it was anonymized data, and we really couldn't use it too much, but it was better than nothing. That's what we used, because we didn't want to go through all the hassle of, having to ask someone for a favor and then owing them that favor, cough, cough, major corporation here. Because that would suck. And also, we don't play that game because we're, equity-minded people who don't believe in handing over, digital rights or information of our citizens to a company where morality may not have a high standing. So yeah, no chips, because we wouldn't be able to coordinate that even on our best day, let's be honest. And also we had something that worked as enough of a convenient sample to be fine to begin with.
I used to review medical
also
software.
You already have a cell phone, so
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to work for a company that reviewed medical software. It was like JD Power and Associates, but for software that's used in hospitals and stuff. And boy, I learned a lot about the IT departments in those hospitals, and they have so much work to do to it's like a patchwork of stuff to get systems to communicate with each other. Can you imagine trying to put a giant conspiracy of data accumulation into that mix?
I've experienced the barest minimum of IT in hospitals, which is to say I worked for a company that supplied the printers and copiers to the biggest hospital in St. Louis, Barnes Jewish. And suffice it to say that it's a mess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are still machines that use Windows 95 that's never been patched. That's a common thing.
Mm-hmm.
The drivers for some of the newer copiers have to be they're just so comprehensive. It's ridiculous.
Well, and to go back to this conspiracy theory one last time, like I said before, I hate to have to take it serious, but this is the thing I want to point out about science in general. If something like that was happening, the public, we may not be immunologists or virologists or even epidemiologists or anything like that, but we as the public, whenever Apple locks their operating system, we figure it out and we crack it and we get back into it every single time. If we want to figure something out, we will as a people. And if there's a chip in my skin transmitting some information, you can be damn sure that people are going to figure that out. They're going to be measuring, the data that's being sent out. They're going to figure that crap out. It's not going to just be this giant secret that they can get away with. I feel like fear and paranoia drives conspiracy theories big time, but we're smarter than that. When we're in a haunted house, we turn the lights on. We don't walk around in the dark and get scared by creaking doors.
Well, that's taking an interesting approach to it. But for a lot of people, conspiracy theories provide the one thing that we currently can't, which is comfort and concrete answers. And that's often what people are seeking. It's not that they necessarily wholeheartedly, if you sat them down and they were able to kind of, without shame, say, everything, they probably would go, yeah, no, I don't. I'm not sure I really believe this either. But it beats the alternative because it feels better and because, honestly, I don't know what's going on in the world, and that makes me feel vulnerable and makes me feel weak and makes me feel scared. And if I do this, at least I'm doing something. And, some people are actively malice and they want to see the world burn and do all this other crap, and they're evil, quack. I censored myself there. I hope you don't mind.
No, that was great.
But there are people who
In
are
fact, I may just cut
genuinely-
that out and use it as the bleep from now on. So, like in Dakota earlier, it's just, quack.
Oh my gosh.
There are genuinely bad people out there who genuinely want to mess with our stuff, and there are also, outside entities who do want to influence us in certain ways, so as to weaken our infrastructure or weaken our ability to react to things. But that's not everyone. People are just scared, and is it unfortunate that they believe in these? Yes. Do I wish that there was a way to communicate with them without the shame of admitting, hey, look, you were wrong about this conspiracy theory? It's cool. Science is wrong about stuff all the time.
That is a good point. It would be nice to just, and I guess that's part of why we're doing the show. This is an open arms to like, hey, here's some information. It's okay to be wrong. I don't know is a perfectly acceptable answer when you don't know things, and even thinking you did know and then being corrected. That's all what science is as well. Science can be wrong too, and we just have to be willing to self-correct. That's the biggest difference.
Exactly.
It's okay to experience that fear and paranoia. I do it too. And to Dakota's point earlier, we haven't tackled the religion topic yet. We will. I'm sure I'll make a lot of friends and family angry when I get to that topic. But
We will.
That parallel right there is the same
angry,
thing. A lot of people believe things out of a need for comfort, a need for answers, and sometimes the answer is I don't know.
Well, and sometimes the comfort even is to not disturb their family dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
They're in a situation where they can't speak out about the things that they want to speak out about, or, stuff like that. And so they either are ignorant, they don't want to look into it because ignorance is bliss in their situation, or they do and decide to side with those who the path of least resistance, basically.
Mm-hmm. I think it's important to note, even if you're practiced in saying that you don't know or saying that you had been wrong, it's sometimes still not easy.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, 100%.
There's always that level of, well, I know what I'm doing. I believe in the truth, and
there's a knee-jerk reaction for sure. As soon as someone confronts you about anything, it's like, why am I being attacked right now? It's like,
right. And it's, it just takes practice. It's not something that's going to come overnight, and you shouldn't beat yourself up about not immediately being able to admit that you're wrong.
Well, sometimes I've had to sleep on it. Sometimes I've had to sleep on something and wake up the next day and be like, shit, they were right.
I mean, really,
they were right.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, it's like any manual labor test. Like when I used to chop wood a lot, which I don't have a fireplace now, but it used to be.
I love chopping wood. Sorry.
But oh yeah, and like starting out, it sucks because your hands hurt and you got blisters and they'll crack and they'll bleed and you feel terrible. But then after a while, you grow those calluses and you're like, you know what? This doesn't suck so much and the reward is pretty sweet. I get to have a nice warm crackling fire that I can enjoy, the latest crappy novel that I decided to pick up recently. And that's awesome. And that admitting you're wrong part does lead to a greater reward. Like, truth be told, admitting that we're wrong is something that we need to do more of. And
absolutely,
I've had to admit I was wrong in this entire thing many times, and I'm sure I'll still have plenty more times where I'll be like, "Yo, I don't think anyone could have seen that coming, but I made an assumption based off the data I had, and I'm sorry that was incorrect." Like at the very beginning of this, we thought COVID was going to be like MERS or SARS, where we'd have a couple of cases and it'd be mostly localized to the region where it came from, and that'd be it. Clearly incorrect. And in the note of the religion bit, it's this funny thing that I keep on seeing, and I guess I've been guilty of it as well, of trying to separate science and religion. Like scientists can't be religious and religious people can't be scientists. Fact of the matter is, look, I'm Christian. I have faith, and the funny thing is, I'm constantly disappointed by my peers, because they forget the heritage with which they came from. Because most early scientists were Christians, because they were the people with all the time to do the stuff, because, they were chilling in monasteries with pea plants, for example. And obviously, Yeah, and we also don't want to take away from individuals of other faiths who did a lot of amazing stuff. Like the Muslim Golden Age, baller. I'd love to see Baghdad back in the day. But I do express a great deal of disappointment in that it seems like, in particular, evangelical groups have this cult of personality alongside their faith, and it may not even be explicit, but it's that the community is tied so closely to a single leader, and if you deviate from that leader's beliefs, then something may go wrong for you. And that leader may be looking out for business interests as opposed to community interests, and perhaps that tithing plate, that might be what's getting them in. And
100%.
And it's a joke that I've made a lot of that. Yes, church is supposed to bring you to God, but it's not supposed to build you an express lane. You're not supposed to be hitting your afterlife quite this quick. And it's unfortunate that many people have as a result of that. But there's this weird disconnect between, religion and science, and honestly conservatism, that needs to be mended. And I'm not a sociologist. I don't know how to fix that. But it's something that needs to be dealt with, because otherwise we're just going to keep doing this again and again, and it's going to keep sucking worse and worse, because there's going to be more people like me who are on the verge of quitting, who just want to leave, who just don't care anymore. Well, I don't say don't care anymore. I do care, but I believe that my efforts are not sufficient, and thus I could better spend my time doing something else.
Well, and it's kind of the where, like, you want to leave the community, but not the faith. You know what I mean?
I meant in general, in terms of leaving my field, because I don't believe that there's enough change going on as a result of the work being done. But I mean, in terms of the faith, yeah, I've separated myself from most people within my own faith, because I can't trust them to be what they think they are. And likewise, I can't trust myself to be non-judgmental or, kind enough to them to be able to lead them from where they're at to where they need to be, because I'm not that person. And it sucks.
Well, it's so hard when, like, so many lives are on the line to be that, like, calm, cool, and collected when confronting people like that. Because you're like, dude, you not wearing a mask could literally kill someone. Like, what is not getting through?
It's a perfect opportunity for me to bring up what I talk about a lot with this weird, like, when somebody says that they're a Christian, I feel like in today's day you have to ask if they believe in classic Jesus or Republican Jesus. It's like I am continually amazed by, even if you're a believer, that the character of Jesus is the polar opposite of the behavior that we see on the mostly on the conservative side of that spectrum. Go ahead.
I mean, Jesus was, in fact, the first historically notable person of color to be executed by the authorities unjustly.
But why is every depiction of him white?
That's Republican.
That's called whitewashing.
Well, I was about to say, it's not due to Republicans, because it was way before that.
Yeah, I know. I just had to reference the line.
But that's the party of the faith or whatever. I've heard it referred to they think that the nation is a Christian nation. All this kind of stuff. I'm not saying they all do, of course. I'm not trying to generalize an entire group of people, but there is a huge chunk of the conservative side of that spectrum that believes, in just things that aren't real. Like, this country was not founded on Christianity or any of its tenets. It was founded on the freedom of getting away from having the government tell you what you should and shouldn't believe. It was founded on it's the land of the free. It's literally, we're trying to push things back to some sort of...
I would like to point out that is, to some degree, a little bit of nationalistic propaganda, as far as the reason that the people we know as Americans as pilgrims left England is because they wanted to use their religion to tell other people what to do in England, and
I
England
understand
said,
that.
"No, you need to leave."
Anyway, we're tangenting way off into the religion topic, and I'd like to tackle that another day, especially after I organize my thoughts. And also, I don't want to disrespect our guest today either. We're not here to attack your faith. So,
no. It wasn't coming off as that at all. And in fact,
Okay,
I was just as critical as I believe you guys were as well.
But I do want to thank you for bringing up that it is possible to exist in that state where you have faith in something. And like I said, we'll have a whole other episode where we're going to talk about the concept of faith, because I have, points to make on that. But that you can set that into its own corner and respect the tenets of science, of the scientific method, of standards of evidence, and all that stuff that is required to make objective determinations about the world we live in. Like that. Those two things so often conflict with each other because, obviously if you can come to a conclusion one way with different standards of evidence, then who's to say you're not going to take those same standards of evidence to another area where they, don't apply. And so if you can't follow the evidence to where it leads and you want to just have a foregone conclusion, then you're going to end up with a bias, even if you're not aware of it a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very fair. And I kind of would like to close off this bit of it with a bit of wisdom that I was given a long time ago, is that science should be seen as the how things do. Religion should, if you believe in it, of course, be the why, so that you can work cooperatively and they needn't conflict so long as you keep that balance. Because science doesn't usually define motive. And likewise, religion can't very well define mechanism. And that's kind of how I make peace with it. And of course, other people are entitled to their own views and entitled to their own, ways of parsing the world. And it's one of those subjective personal truths, right? Like the previous episode. But that's kind of how I jam with it.
Understood.
I can respect that, because I feel like,
Well, I have lots of questions, and maybe you'll want to come on the religion episode at some point, and we can bombard you. But maybe you don't want to do that either.
Let's just. I'll not address the point because, like you said, tangent on religion, not this episode.
Yeah.
If that is something that is wanted, sure, I'll hop on, but I'm not going to speak for all Christians, because despite me being ordained, I'm not that good of a Christian, let's be honest.
Well, but we would be asking you about what you believe and why, not what anyone else believes, we wouldn't be saddling you with generalized baggage.
It should be personal gnosis.
Yeah.
Cool.
That would be my goal of talking to anybody about something. If I disagree with them on, I'm going to ask you questions. You tell me what it means to you, all class clarifying questions, that kind of a thing. I'm not going to just sit here and pretend I know anything about you just because you told me you have a Christian faith. I know
everything I need to know about you.
That's not the way honest inquiry should work. And I'm not going to do that to anyone who comes on. If you volunteer to come on, we're going to ask you about stuff. This is why I want to know about your experience in the field. You obviously don't speak for all epidemiologists either. But you can speak for the facts. Yeah, you can speak for the objective facts because you study them. You know about them. And I think that's important.
And even on that note, again, the facts right now are so in flux because honestly, we'll not know the full extent of everything that's been going on probably for a decade past, when this is all over, because not only do we have to worry about, these secondary symptoms or people who are developing allergies to the sun after 6 months of being ill, or all these crazy things that we hear about from time to time. Yeah, that's a thing that's been seen in case studies, and I don't know how valid that is because it's only been a sample size of 3. But we have that to worry about, and then we also have the long-term psychological effects of this. This, whether we like to admit it or not, this is likely to change a lot of things about how we view life. Imagine if you will. Sorry.
For mental health trigger warning for anybody listening, but the suicide rate's gone up in places. I think
in places.
In places, not overall, but I think it was Japan.
I will say that there has been a lot of talk about polysubstance use disorder, so the use of multiple drugs. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, apologies. Would like to correct myself. Probably a sensationalized headline that I misunderstood. The headline was that, and this was October or November, that more people died in Japan from suicide that month than COVID.
That actually could be perfectly valid, truth be told.
Which is a truth, I'm sure, but Japan is also handling COVID a lot better than... That does not mean their suicide rate went up.
Even people who are trying to think critically and trying to be objective still read headlines and still take them and internalize them, and I do it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I even have some false beliefs about the origins of the United States of America and what the people thought and what the intentions in law were, and I'm willing to be corrected on that stuff, and that's why this conversation is useful. And that's the most important thing I want anyone listening to this show ever to take away is be willing to be wrong. Now, if I go after the show and I look up, as much as I can, or try to talk to someone else, and I don't change my opinion, that's fine. At least I'm trying to be, intellectually honest. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that I feel like that we should be teaching children growing up is to think critically, to be willing to be able to be wrong, because not being willing to be wrong is why my grandpa is dead, because he was not willing to admit that this thing was real, and he would not.
We could do a whole parenting, child psychology episode about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do want to.
We were done with the personal call outs. Thank you.
I was saying for me, that was a personal call out for me.
Oh, well.
I mean, the shoe fits.
Fair enough. There's one thing I do want to quickly address, though, before I forget, because I have terrible memory sometimes. So in terms of suicide rates going up, so that is always a complicated question, as is things for most psychological distress, drug usage. Because in most cases, most of those things have been on the uptrend for years. So it's a question of, are they going up? Okay, yes. Okay, then are they following the trend, or are they going exponentially higher? What's the rate increase? Because there's this concern about suicidality after COVID and during COVID, especially for individuals who are younger. And truth be told, that concern is perfectly valid, because we don't want people to end their own lives. We don't want people to see that as the only way out, because truth be known, except in circumstances that are very few, at least that come to my mind, it isn't the correct way to go about it, and isn't the way that really should be. So with all that concern in mind, the accelerated concern, the hypervigilance about it, I won't say may not be warranted, because I still do believe that any suicidality should be taken very seriously, and anything we can do to prevent it should be done. But perhaps it is not as beneficial as people would like to fixate on it quite in the manner we are currently. And I say that with the additional statement of, historically we have this very bad habit, and it's a habit
Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
All right.
We have this bad habit of, we will find the new shiny thing to be terrified of, and we'll do nothing about it, but we'll be terrified for a minute, throw some money at it, and hope it goes away. And I'm deathly afraid that is something that might happen with a lot of these longer term effects of what this pandemic has done. And that's why I always advise a little bit of caution when interpreting those figures.
So I think we as a society have a really bad habit of trying to address the symptom.
Yeah.
Instead of addressing the cause.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think that's where a lot of our focus on suicide is coming in. Like, yes, it's a problem. I think.
Well, mental health.
There are things we could do. There are things we could do, such as Medicare for All that included therapy.
We just don't want to be the people that a school shooting happens and Doom came out last year, so we blame Doom. It's like, we just want to make sure we understand that it is complicated and not draw short-sighted conclusions. And
the other thing to it, too, is, we can say that treating the symptom is bad, and to an extent, it isn't terribly beneficial, in terms of long-term, but in the short term, in the response mindset that we have to be in right now, because we don't have, sufficient ability to address it systematically. It's what we can do, and sometimes
Right.
that's all you got. And like,
I was just gonna say, not the hyper focusing on suicide, but the whole like mental health movement in general is really good in some ways, especially when it comes to like your work. And when like HR is involved, like I feel like they're starting to be a little bit more understanding in that aspect, specifically with disabled people. And coming up with those, working from home. It was such a, quote unquote taboo thing to have a corporate job and work from home for a lot of people. And now everybody's doing it, So I do get the whole hyper focusing on symptoms and stuff like that is definitely a bad thing. But right now, I feel like everyone just trying to do what they can do is going to create a lot of good for some people, It's not all bad.
Certainly. And that is the kind of bizarre thing that I have realized, is that for the individuals who are privileged enough to be able to work from home, like this is kind of the response for those individuals has been excellent, because most companies went, oh, we don't want to be, the reason for this, so let's go ahead and start working people from home. And obviously there are significant portions of the population who can't, and thus it's kind of a null point. But it's fascinating to see that very distinct separation of cultures, from both from the number scenario of who's getting sick, and just from the like, what are the concerns for each community? Because people who work from home with kids or such, we're talking about things like, oh, well, how can we identify child abuse while they're, school from home? For adults, how can we identify, mental illness that is manifesting itself in ways that may be harmful? And then we have people who are, working grocery jobs, and it's the yes and. Like, yes, how do we address this psychological distress, and how can we, detect and mitigate a cluster in this community because of it?
Right.
And it's fascinating in the worst sort of way to see not only that play out, but then also how people respond to it. And it shows a lot about us that I'm not fond of, truth be told.
100%. The fact that like, so for a while, like my family, they do some good stuff, but they would, like around the holidays especially, they would call local elementary schools and donate money to whoever's like lunch accounts or either zero or in the negatives. Like they'd pay it off and they'd give each of the kids like, $10 or something like that. Yeah. So they, they do stuff like that. And that's a big worry, I feel like, for a lot of people who are involved, with children in those communities, is how many of them are going hungry now because they don't have access to school. They don't have access to school lunches. Like it's
yeah,
it's good and it's bad.
Yeah, and that's a very valid concern. And truth be told, there's a lot of there are a lot of communities that do recognize that that's a very real threat, and they've figured out a way to coordinate in some way, either food distribution or supply distribution of some type. And it's
right.
It's something that's not well advertised, because honestly, government officials suck at advertising, except for re-elections.
Even the food distribution is so many people need it.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. So many people need it. They're running out. The lines are hours and hours long. Like we have a food bank over here that's, kind of close to my house, and I pass it every once in a while, and they do it every Monday. Every Monday it is packed. And it's
quite frankly, distribution is the main reason that nobody's bothered to solve world hunger at this point. Like,
exactly.
It's not.
I mean, I feel like there's other reasons.
Well, I mean, apart from they can't really profit from it, but like the distribution is hard enough that the accolades wouldn't be worth it to whoever could do it.
Right. Yeah, just yeah.
It
There's
can
a lot
be
of
done.
communities
It
who are suffering
absolutely can be
before.
done. Just the people who are capable won't because they don't get enough payoff, I guess.
Let me bring this back to the pandemic a little bit, since we're kind of going
Sorry.
off the rails.
We-
It's okay.
we
It
have-
I
happens.
mean,
we have gone way off the rails.
I don't feel like this is too off the rails though. It's associated with the pandemic. You know, there's a lot of trickling effect that is
I
happening
understand.
in
I mean,
regards
if
to
you
the
have more you want
pandemic.
to say on the subject, that's fine.
You're
I
good.
was just going to ask some Micah some questions, if you guys are okay with that.
Yeah, for sure.
No worries.
Yeah, I'd like
Um,
to definitely hear more from the expert guest. Like,
I
or
just kind
the
of want to know
semi-expert
what
guest.
your experience is like, just socially, like just interacting with friends or people. Like, are you surprised how many people like think that you're in on something, or think that what you do is a sham, or like does that not happen on a regular basis? Like, I've always wondered, like, if you have to deal with that all the time, every day
He
from
did
people in
say
your
he had
life.
to get rid of Facebook.
Oh, yeah. That's right, you did say
So
that.
it hasn't been a terribly common thing, which is kind of lucky because before this happened, I mostly worked from home, or during deployments went into the office with people who are very like-minded individuals, because most of us have advanced degrees in a similar field, if not the same field. So I was blessed in
Fair.
that. But all of that said, I have had to cut relations with several people because they were either putting other people at such immense risk that I couldn't stomach dealing with them anymore. Which, is that the most responsible decision on my part? In terms of the greater good, no. It was a self-care thing, and there's a limit you reach. And at least for me, if someone hits that limit, that's it.
Well, and the reason I
that
ask
sucks.
is because my personal experience is my personal experience, and yours is yours, and I just wondered, you obviously run in different circles than I do. And so I wondered if maybe there was a bias on my part for seeing more of this than there actually is, or just the worst of the worst gets put on the internet, and so that's what I see, and it creates this picture. And I just wondered if maybe, like, you had a more positive experience than I was imagining. But it sounds like it's a mix of a little column A, a little column B.
Yeah, it definitely is. Like, it's another reason I don't typically spend a lot of time on social media anymore either, is because of these just insane things that happened. That just there's no way for me to be able to handle that and continue working the insane hours that I'm working and have any semblance of, even with medical treatment, something that isn't terribly depressing all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And this is coming from a guy who prior to COVID, my specialties were suicide and drug overdoses. That was my jam, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, in and out, not a problem. And I was fine. So it's been a bit of a struggle in terms of, parsing what the very vocal minority, and I do want to point out, it is a minority of folks who believe all of this is nonsense, that all of this isn't real. It's hard to see that on the internet because it's only the vocal people that get noticed.
Right.
And in terms of individuals that I interact with, I do run mostly within my circle of people who are within a similar profession. But I do have some friends that are teachers, have some friends that are nurses, et cetera, et cetera. And the thing that's fascinated me is the people that are kind of lower on the totem pole, the people that are, the teacher's aides, or they work in special education, but they don't have anything with administration, or, nurses that are not BSNs, a Bachelor of Science in Nursing. They tend to kind of have a better grip on what's going on than the people ahead of them, because there have been, cases where they were given guidance that was directly in the face of what they should have been doing, or they were not given enough information to make informed decisions. And it's wild, because the other thing that I've noticed is people put so much trust in healthcare professionals and healthcare workers, and allied healthcare workers and all these other people. The fact of the matter is, we're not all equally well informed. Like, I have a friend of mine that's a nurse, and she didn't know if an N95 would work or not. She didn't know what sort of respiratory gear was needed. She didn't know, if you could get sick by touching, someone who is COVID positive. She didn't know all these things that I thought,
Wow.
6 months in, it was common knowledge of here's how you do it, here's how you be safe. And, it's wild to me because people will not have that information, but they're a nurse or they're a doctor, so they must know. Like, no, they don't have to know. That's the worst part of it, is because we don't go on we do go on giant conference calls, but I can guarantee nothing of use is used there. But like
conference calls that could have been an email.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess I was exaggerating. There are certainly some uses in terms of information sharing, but what I'm getting at is, not everyone is as equally informed. Even if they're in the same field, not everyone is, particularly an expert in one field just because they know of it. And it's wild to see the differences of opinion that breeds, especially when it's, I'm more qualified, but I know less. You're lesser qualified, but you know more. How do we play this dance that I don't lose my respect, but you keep your health?
Right.
And that's my main takeaway so far, has been that wild, interaction there. And also, just how much politics has been baked into this whole pandemic. Because, so full disclosure, I have, during the summer, I worked kind of as a first aid guy for several protests. There were Black Lives Matter protests. I don't think anyone here is surprised by that. And it was wild because I thought there was going to be these huge COVID outbreaks after these, because, it's a lot of people coming together. It's thousands of people. No, because people were wearing masks and social distancing, and outside of the people actively being pepper sprayed, people were keeping their coughing and sneezing to a minimum, thankfully. And,
That hurt, by the way.
Yeah, oh yeah, no, I know. Yeah, there's a repaired tooth somewhere in here.
Same reason. I wasn't being bad.
No,
I was at a protest.
Yeah, but it's still violating the norms of a pandemic to go and attend that, and I fully recognize my own hypocrisy in going. And we expected these numbers to balloon up, but the number of cases that ballooned out of those protests, as opposed to what we would expect on a normal week with everyone kind of social distancing and doing the right thing, it was less than 1% by far of the cases that we were expecting. We were expecting hundreds, hundreds of hundreds. I think it was something less than a dozen excess cases, and it was tens of thousands of people attending these protests. And that's the other thing that was wild, was that people were taking social responsibility, and they were good. They were good people, because what they would do is they would go, hey, I'm going to a protest. I have elderly parents at home. I should probably not be with my elderly parents immediately after these protests, so I'm going to shack up with these people who I know are cool, and we're going to go rent a hotel for 2 weeks together and absolutely hate each other at the end of it. But if all of us are negative, we can go home and no one gets sick. And people did that. That was a thing that people did.
It's amazing to see how much actually being proactive about this stuff actually works. It's like watching New Zealand beat this thing over and over again, and we still have people here acting like masks don't work. And it's it's it works. You take the precautions, and it works. It may not be 100% effective, but neither are seatbelts, neither are anything we do. All we can do is the best we can.
Yeah, and part. Oh, sorry.
They strictly enforce masks at my work. I can't work from home. And
good.
We haven't had cases. We're in a really hot area right now, or were all through November, and I can only assume continuing to do so as the holidays come.
They enforced them at my wife's work too, and she thought for sure she was going to have it because someone came in positive, and actually the spread was super limited because most people were wearing their masks in the office. A couple people that didn't.
Yeah.
You picked it up walking through the aisle, and yeah. So and you were talking about earlier how people are just uninformed and stuff like that, but also how you're surprised how much trust the public puts into doctors and nurses and stuff, they should know everything. And that's the perfect, my sister-in-law, who's super anti-vax, super alternative medicine, like will not, just absolutely hates doctors, hates hospitals, hates the medical field. This, she doesn't understand any of the science, that kind of stuff. She's a very black and white type of thinker, I've noticed. She had a bad experience with a doctor a long time ago. I don't remember the details, so I won't bother speculating. We can ask my wife sometime, but that's basically what changed her. Ever since then, doctor's bad. It's been that way forever. And it's like, my wife has a lot of chronic issues, which you don't need to go into, just back, neck, head stuff, migraines. And we've been to so many different doctors. I'm a big fan of second and third opinions, but it costs money. And we can go on a whole nother episode another day about, medical health insurance and all that stuff in this country and universal health care and all that good stuff. But basically right now it sucks to get second and third opinions. But as the public, you're right. That's kind of what you have to do. Because I used to go see this doctor who he was this senior. I don't know if he's around anymore. It was a long time ago. I forget his name, but he was just my family doctor, and I used to go in to see him. But one day I go in there and I had some rash on my shin or something like that, and he pulls out this like 50-year-old tome, to start looking for stuff. And I was finally like, this is just like I've had issues with him before, and I was like, I think I'm going to try another doctor and see how that goes. And they like solved it right away, and I was like, okay. Clearly they're just people too. Just, even you can get your medical license 50 years ago and stagnate in keeping up on things. And
yeah, it's just like technology. Stuff is always changing.
Mm-hmm.
Science is always changing. So if you're not there's so many fields like that.
Oh yeah, my field, the programming field, same way.
Programming,
it's changing so fast that all I can do is like see what's hot right now and just read a textbook. I read like at least 2 textbooks a year on whatever the new thing is, and some of them I don't benefit much from at all, and other ones I've changed my entire career over. I went from doing C# all the Microsoft.NET tech to doing Node.js and JavaScript and all that good stuff because I saw the winds changing, and that's what it takes is you have to pay attention or you'd miss the boat. That's how you become one of those programmers that can only do Fortran.
The winds of change.
Actually, that's a fantastic podcast too, by the way.
Sorry, what'd you say?
Dakota said the winds of change, and I was like, that's a fantastic podcast, by the way.
I never heard of it.
Yeah. Oh, I highly recommend it. It's a nice historical one. But to your point about continuing education, like for example, I have to get recertified every 2 years for my certified in public health credential. Mm-hmm. And I have to get recertified, I think, yearly for my advanced disaster librarian credential. You have to keep up on it, otherwise you will lose. You will lose your credibility, you will lose certifications, you will lose your ability to advance in the field. And it's something that, I'm very blessed in, because in my field in particular, we legitimately have weekly meetups of, hey, have you seen this new journal article? Okay, if not, let's all read it together. Let's analyze it. Let's see, where the pitfalls are and where things could be improved. And we also have a technical skills, group that goes, okay, every week, say there's this problem. How do we fix it? Okay, say there's this program that we need to write to analyze stuff. How do we make it? And that's incredible, and I love that. But it's also extremely privileged, because you can't expect, say, floor nurses who, I don't want to discredit at all. They are working their butts off every day. They're putting themselves at unimaginable risk every day. I can whine about my long hours and having to get exposed sometimes to do field work and all this other stuff, but they're knocking it out of the park every day as much as they can. And they also don't have time to renew their skills very often. Or if they do, it's CEUs that are be done on the back of a magazine, that they had the ability to skim and they'll forget in 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And we do a disservice to a lot of our frontline health workers in that we don't give them the ability to really keep pace, because we either, don't give them the time to do it, or we don't pay them adequately enough that they can actually take the time off to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Or to care to want to do it.
It's a hard thing about this show. There's so many tangents we could go on.
Oh yeah.
I know.
Yeah, and I'm particularly
I'm trying so hard.
No, it's fine. I've been doing it as well. Don't worry about it. This is why we're doing it offline. But yeah. It's it's really difficult to just go through all this and have people not understand what, like, I've heard a lot of people talk about science as though it's an ideology just like any other. I think I mentioned this briefly last time, but like that's the
methodology.
Sorry, what'd you say?
I think
ideology about methodology. Yeah, and that's the power of science is staying on top of that kind of stuff. Like you said, it was amazing that I think you pointed out that we had the RNA sequence already done for COVID, which was crazy.
It was like within 2 weeks. Let me pull it up. Actually, hold on.
Yeah, I'd never heard that before, and I think that's awesome. And that's what happens when we're on top of things. Is trying to stay ahead of everything is even though it still became a pandemic, it's like it's cool to see that we can actually get ahead of stuff like that. We can stay one step ahead of nature, and it's kind of crazy because nature's pretty nuts. It can do a lot of stuff. Like this virus is just. I'm actually surprised that it's been as long as it has before we've ever had something like this. It seems like we've had a privileged 100 years or so,
Well, so about that, everyone thinks that the 1918 flu pandemic was the last one, but it really wasn't. Like, we had a 1957 flu outbreak that was pretty devastating, too. That was tens of thousands of people that I believe died, which isn't really much considering current numbers. But it was.
I guess, did such things like because I guess the big reason people feel like the 1918 one was the last big one is we see all the pictures of people with masks from it. Did the 1977 one have like enforced masks?
I actually am not well informed enough to know. I think that might have been the case at a local level, but I'm not sure about nationwide mandates.
It seemed like the 1918 one had nationwide level. Or at least local so many times over that it was effectively so.
Yeah, and it's wild. My favorite story out of the 1918 pandemic was there was this town in Colorado that looked around and went, "Oh, there's flu going on. Well, we're not having any of that." And they legit just closed down both roads into the town. They didn't let anyone in. They didn't let anyone out. And they
That's
completely
awesome.
Avoided that town as the pandemic crossed. And the funny thing is, like, that sounds ridiculous. That sounds hilarious. But it's worked for Ebola, and believe you me, there were discussions about doing that at a local level. Pretty seriously about, well, what if we just shut down the interstates? What happens? And of course, that didn't pan well for anyone in that discussion.
No,
but
how would you
would
get
have
to
solved
work?
the problem.
Capitalism.
Well,
that's the whole point. Is then they would have to admit that universal basic income worked.
Yeah. Also, while we were talking, I was able to not only look at the code itself, but you're actually able to download it and look at the BLAST database of beta coronavirus nucleotide sequences. Like, I'll throw it in our little shared chat here. If you guys want to have a sources section, which I will also contribute.
Oh yeah,
to.
Let's do that. That sounds like a great idea.
Check out those resources. And the thing is, this can be, this was done within 2 weeks, at least the first version of it. This can be updated by anyone in the world, so long as they have the proper credentials and they can be verified and all this other stuff. But like, we don't have to wait on stuff anymore. We can download it. Like, people are worried about, oh, well, what if there's a new mutation of SARS-CoV-2 that invalidates the vaccine? Okay, that sucks. Is it theoretically possible? Yeah. I mean, there could be spike mutations that make it, a little bit more difficult for the vaccine to work. But here's the kicker. Within about 48 hours of us figuring that out, the sequence can be changed. And I don't know how long it would take in terms of a manufacturing process, but probably not too long. And there'd be a new version of the vaccine out.
So that's a perfect example of a lot of people think that because we can't know everything or can't predict everything, that they like equate that with knowing nothing. Like, oh, I can substitute my beliefs in here because that they're just as valid as your beliefs, that that it's not going to mutate or something like that. And it's like, no, the difference is we're willing to adapt with the information in the scientific community. We, if that happens, like you said, 48 hours, we'll be on it. We know things about this virus. We know how we can fight it. We know what has to be done. It just sucks. It's like, Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, and that is the major thing that I have noticed a lot of, at least in terms of conspiracy theories and people who are hesitant about a lot of these things, is it's the all or nothing fallacy. Like, do masks protect 100% of people 100% of the time, always? No. Because the fact of the matter is, SARS-CoV-2 is a very small virus. Very, very small virus. However, there's moisture in your breath, and it can latch onto those little, particles of moisture and catch onto the mask, and that's going to severely limit the amount of spread. Not to mention the virus also just by, statistical probability latching onto a piece of cloth.
See, that's something I hadn't even thought of.
On.
I don't know all the physical interactions of a virus with all the different molecules and stuff, so I hadn't even thought of that. If I'm someone who tries to stay informed, and there's still tons of stuff that you could teach me and educate me on. The difference is I'm willing to sit here and say, I don't know this stuff, and if I wanted to learn it, I could take the time and go sit down and understand it and put the time in and, and go to school and do whatever I wanted to. I could learn as much or as little as I want to. But I think the important thing is recognizing that there's a lot you don't know. And if you're just someone like my sister-in-law or someone out there who thinks that a Google search is sufficient to tell doctors that they don't know what they're talking about, like, that just blows my mind. That is just, that attitude is mind-boggling.
To be perfectly fair, there are instances in which that is appropriate. There have been times where I've been bested by a Google search. And that was a harsh experience, but one that I did need. Because, there's...
Like, okay.
Yeah, there's... there is some validity in, hey, I have found... this thing that says this might also be a possibility. And that's the way it should be approached is this a possibility?
Yeah, as a question. Instead of just adopting a belief because you read something. That's the big difference.
Yeah, and again, to kind of go back to the all or nothing fallacy, it's that whole idea of, well, these individuals will find something that fits their confirmation bias if they are really dead set in this is what I want to believe. And anything that is even the slightest bit different is wrong. Well, in a lot of the professional fields that deal with this, like, nerd fight doesn't begin to describe what goes down. And it's over stuff that is 2% different than the stuff that, the other person said. It is the minutest of details. And they don't even talk about that other 98% because that's already presumed that we're already in agreement with that. But that other 2%, shares might be thrown. It will go down.
But that's the thing when you guys know what you're talking about and you can argue the minutia. Someone else can't. They might take that as the scientists can't even agree. And it's like, no, that's like you said. We agree on 98% of this, and we're arguing about 2% of it. We're not. This isn't the same thing as we all have our own opinions on stuff, and we're all just running around not knowing who's right.
Yeah, and admittedly, we'll do stuff like bring someone's mama into the situation, and that's never good. But it's like, it's because we already have that at least common understanding of, okay, this is what reality is, but you're perverting that last little bit of it so much that I don't think I can agree with you. And, it's not even perverting it. It's just a matter of having a different viewpoint or having a different, lens by which you're viewing it. And that's kind of where that whole, a lot of conspiracy theories fall apart, is because you have to buy the whole hog to kind of fall into a conspiracy theory to any level, because you have to in many ways separate yourself from the reality of, okay, is this the most convenient option for what the goal is trying to be achieved? Is the goal trying to be achieved actually possible? All these other subsequent questions that have to be kind of swept aside, because an individual needs an answer that's concrete, needs an answer for sure, and needs an answer now. I can guarantee you, 12 months after this pandemic ends, we will still be arguing at each other with raised voices and shaking fists about the transmission rate, whether it was 7 or 7.1%. It's going to be something that tiny, and we will be sniping at each other in academic literature. We're going to be, in back rooms saying, oh, this quack, this whole...
I think it's beautiful. I think this adversarial process of, it's almost like a competition of it bears out the truth about things. It's the path to objectivity, to try and poke holes in each other's ideas. It's very different from what I think people, a lot of the public pictures when they see a lab coat on a commercial, and they think that they're just trying to prove some theory right.
It's precisely like we discussed in episode 1, though, as far as trying to see everything from all the viewpoints. If you're capable of, I'm not saying that this is always the way to go about it, but I definitely know it happens more among intellectual communities, like scientific communities. If you're capable of being truly adversarial about it, oftentimes that's how you get to the bottom of it faster.
Because
if you can be adversarial and still maintain composure,
exactly. Still trying to shed your bias as much as possible.
That is the big if.
Yeah, it is a very big if, and it has ended many a career, and has almost ended mine on a couple of occasions. I will be.
It turns out humans are humans, no matter what field they're in or what job they do.
And the thing is, see, there's a part that I do want to address a little bit in terms of conspiracy theories, especially around COVID, of people often tying their identity to conspiracy theories. That happens in scientific communities too. Like, there are some parts that are somewhat controversial to, several facets of my field. That is a hill I will die on. And it is going to suck if I get proven wrong. But
if you do, the evidence would change your mind, no matter how much you were happy about it, right? So that's important. Yeah. That's a big distinction to make.
Can we have an example of one of the hills you would die on until?
Not without outing myself too much, so I'm gonna have to hold back on that one.
That's fair.
Okay,
that's fair. So you're that kind of controversial. I'm kidding.
Well, I mean, okay. So truth be told, in terms, okay. So in terms of causing issues, I'm response oriented in terms of my actions. So I'm willing to take gambles with less than great information. So if I think something is about 70% correct, I'll roll with it until I find something that's 80% correct, where there's a lot of people, and justifiably so, will go, no, we have to wait until 90% or better. Because from where I came from, which was disaster response, it's cool.
Yeah, you got
hurricane just
quick.
In disaster, 70% is a great number.
Exactly. And I used to work satellite intelligence for it, and it was like, look, we think this flood could be 3 feet or 7 feet, so let's bring out the boats. Because if it's 3 feet,
right?
That's a perfect thing
because if it's 3 feet, the boats can still float in it. But if it's 7 feet, you absolutely need the boat. But it's like when I did some trailblazing, in the woods, on a friend's property. And one of my mantras every day going out, I always had the machete on me. Because never once was I out in the thick woods and say, man, I sure wish I didn't have this machete on me. But there were many times if I did go out without the machete that I'd be trying to clear something and, have to do it with an improper tool. But man, wish I had a machete right now. So.
Yep. Also, improper tool is absolutely my Maynard cover band. Oh, God.
But I mean, we should probably have a whole episode on just the nature of conspiracy theories. But it's just, I feel like there's so much.
Oh, that's an episode.
Yeah. Well, my grandpa was the type of person that was kind of fear and paranoia driven, and he was the type of person that if you could show him a good edited documentary on something, and the facts could be completely wrong, but because of the way it's presented, because of the it can convince him of stuff like that, because it's like, I don't know. He was just driven to things that, if something scared him, if there was a big nasty documentary about some scary thing in a Subway sandwich, he'd swear off Subway, even if it, he's not going to go verify the sources or anything like that. And so, he believed a lot of that kind of stuff. And then there's other times like, I don't fully understand what is going on socially or in people's heads that are afraid to say, I don't know. But my grandpa was, when I was young, he would chastise me. He'd ask me what I believe about something. And if my answer was, I don't know, he'd chastise me and say, you can't be a fence sitter. And at the time,
Again,
I was too young to
whole
realize.
episode of child psychology.
Yeah, I was too young to say, "Hey, I don't know" is an acceptable answer.
We've got episodes for weeks, folks. We'll be here for a long time.
Oh, we got a long list. Yep. But yeah, I was too young to be able to say, I don't know is a good answer. But it's definitely a huge insight, I feel like, into the way he thought. Like, you have to be decided on everything. We have to have answers for everything. As to your point, Micah, that's what people want. They want answers and they want them now. And if they can't get them from science, then they'll go wherever they got to go to get them, I suppose.
Yeah, and actually to that point, it's actually funny because I'd only heard about this somewhat recently, but there was kind of a standing school for a long time, I believe, within the business community, but also kind of, it's spread out as ideas that tend to work do, of never admit when you're wrong and always stick to a decision, because that's how you get a client or make a sale or whatever, and then handle the consequences later if at all possible. And that's something that is toxic and it's messed up, but it's also highly effective. Mm-hmm. It's how can I best put this? Lead is highly poisonous, but it's crazy piping. So it's kind of a similar thing, where convenience overtakes the true, the right call.
Yep. Yeah, there's lots of examples of that. You can find all sorts of information on asbestos manufacturing fighting against, the information coming out that asbestos causes cancer, and it's because, we'll have a whole episode in the future, I'm sure, of the nature of corporations and the natural greed that comes into them and stuff like that. Like, the bottom line, it's not inherently evil, it's just naturally goes that way, It's like, it's the way it's designed. They focus on their bottom line. And so if they can lobby and get some policy to flip in their favor so that they can keep manufacturing something and making a profit, then, and then because corporations aren't one individual, they're made up of lots of people, everyone can pass the buck. It's not like one dude sitting on a throne, twisting the mustache. I mean, maybe Jeff Bezos or someone is, but
I don't think he has a hair on his body.
Have you seen? I haven't seen a hair on his head since like '95.
I actually don't even know what he looks like, to be honest.
You don't know what Jeff looks like? Okay.
He looks like a human dragon.
But this is just what happens when people get put into a system. This is how the system works. We do the thing that makes the system go. And then when everyone can pass the buck and the blame and down the line, and corporations end up doing a lot of things, that aren't great just because of the nature of how they are. And I think that's important to remember too. It's not always intended to be bad, but we should recognize it and try to force them to fix it or stop it or do whatever we have to do in those situations. But yeah, like it's just funny how many times we have to back correct because we're so quick to just jump the gun. We're so quick to leap before we look. Like, oh shit, there's lead in all of our gasoline and it's all over the world. Oops.
Oh, so that's why everyone's killing each other.
Yeah, everyone's going
Tetris this whole time.
Everyone's literally going insane because there's lead everywhere.
Oh man, yeah. No, environmental health is an entire thing that's just nightmare fuel.
Yeah, it's sad because in order to fix it, it requires us to all work together, and it also requires us to conquer some larger problems. The economical imbalance that we have in this country, and lots of stuff all over the world that we have to solve as a people in order to even be able to come together and fix some things. Corporations are pumping all sorts of shit into the atmosphere so that they can make make products, and they're the ones that are lobbying to make policy. It's like it's become this little inside loop, its own little economy up at the top of the tree there that's just kind of controlling everything. And it's not like there's a king of it all. I mean, Trump probably thinks he's a king of it all, but it's just the way it works. It's naturally progressed this way. That's why we just have to make change, governmental level change, to make things work the way we want them to work. And obviously what that looks like is a source of great argumentation.
Yeah, that's the big problem is what does everybody want? And
true. I do want to take a moment though and kind of use this as a teaching moment, because it's kind of interesting, because while you were talking, I was realizing that a lot of the terminology that you use, like, corporations are throwing stuff into the air and they're dealing with governments to do stuff that they want to do that doesn't necessarily benefit the rest of us. That's while true for very many things, it deserves a little bit more specificity in terms of the who and the what, because a lot of conspiracy theories, truth be told, are founded on those same ideas. It's just slight tweaks where individuals who may not know the minutia, or who may not know what is possible or what is not, can kind of lean into that for good or ill. Like, if truth be told, if there's a conspiracy theory of we need to adopt solar now because power lines are wow, I almost used an Alex Jones line. I can't do that
and what tool can we use to get those specifics? I don't know of any tool we can use to get those specifics, Micah. What might that be?
So EPA reports actually are kind of useful in terms of being able to determine different.
I was just looking for the word science, but you gave me a better answer.
Well, the two.
He doesn't know your sarcasm yet.
Yeah,
I know.
Sarcasm voice.
So unfortunately, my entire thing is I'll either give an exact answer or I'll go, it depends.
But we talked about this last time. You hedge your bets when you speak because you know what you don't know. You don't want to.
No, I don't know what I don't know sometimes too. That's the problem.
You know that there's stuff you don't know. Okay, there. And you can't be 100% certain about anything.
No, God, no.
Yes, Dan.
What? What'd I miss?
It's in the chat.
Yeah, in the chat, Dan was like, "Oh shit, he does have a sarcasm voice." I'm like, "Yes." Alex
I
always
think we all do.
a specific tone. But he's being sarcastic.
Understood when he's being sarcastic, because it's been clear, but it wasn't until you said something that I made the connection to the fact that he's so clear is voice change.
I mean, I'm not trying to troll you. If I was trying to troll you, I'd be stone-faced and make you have to second guess what I'm saying. But, I mean, I have a voice, so I can make it clear.
Yes.
I was just trying to make a joke.
That's fair.
But yeah, my point is that we can use science to track that down, because instead of just coming up with this corporations generically could be generically doing this, we can follow the money, we can follow the employment history of Ajit Pai from Verizon to the FCC, and follow who's lobbying for what. Like, we can follow that kind of stuff. We can get the facts.
And
That's
true.
Anyway,
I
continue.
did want to point out that
EPA
that
reports. Yeah, I think that's a great conversation to have. We should probably do an episode where we try to come up with tons of tools for people. Like, you just talked about the EPA reports to get information the specifics that we want. What are some places, like we already talked about the libraries, how we can get access to academic databases. We could put all of that stuff, compile it into a nice little place for, link people off to that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. So, at least for COVID, I mean, honestly, your big organizations are good to go. In terms of the WHO, they tend to have pretty good up to date information. The CDC.
I thought we weren't trusting them though.
You mean we, as in the United States?
Oh,
yeah.
that.
Oh, you're gonna kill the man.
Come at me.
I'm straight.
Come at me, Micah. I'm ready.
So
Come on.
that was
Killer.
no. It's
I'm ready.
It's just like, so I remember the exact moment I heard that because it was about 20 minutes after the WHO declared COVID a pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked to my colleague and I went, I'm going to wake up and it's going to be August and I'm going to be about 30 pounds lighter and with a big knot on my head because someone obviously bricked me. This can't be real life. Because, the Paris Climate Agreement, us getting out of that was crappy but expected. Truth be told, we are about as solid on keeping promises as, nope, I can't use that joke.
I don't think there's any joke you can use here right now. Like you just
edit.
I'm just going to forego the joke and just say that we are highly not dependable in terms of a lot of international agreements.
Highly not dependable.
Yeah. In terms of things that we really should have been doing for years and we haven't because who's going to stop us?
Geneva Conventions? What are those?
World Health Organization? More like Worthless Help Organization.
Oh no! Oh no!
Okay. Fair enough. Nope, I'm good. But turning this dumpster fire back onto course.
I'm just giving me.
Did you just call me a dumpster fire? I'm offended.
I mean, I'm not turning you. That'd be kind of hard to do. I can't reach across and.
I'm just playing the cards
touch.
2020 dealt me. If it's a dumpster fire, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Actually, complete side tangent. But my favorite GIF this year is of an animated dumpster fire with a little mask on and just kind of dancing around. It's super cute. And we've used that work a few times.
Mine is the one with the dog, and he's just in a burning room, and he's like, "I'm fine. Everything is fine."
Yeah,
this is fine.
But anyways, yeah, using who.int is good. CDC.gov, while their guidance may sometimes be influenced by, direct mandates from the White House, in general, their information is solid. The way I like to look at it, and this is personal, this is not me as a scientist, this is not me as an epidemiologist, this is me as a person. I like to take their guidance as like the bare minimum. This is what you need to do to not be a complete jerk.
A person as opposed to a Sasquatch person?
I mean, I do wear size 16s.
You know what they say about big feet?
Big socks. But
where is the show going now?
Sorry.
It's past 10.
No,
We're not recording anymore.
No, we're
We
recording.
are.
It's just.
But the other good sources too are honestly, if you do actually trust your state and local governments, looking into their Department of Health, Board of Health, Board of Department of Social and Health Services, that kind of stuff. You're probably not going to be led too far astray. And kind of just using that. And I mean, honestly, the one conspiracy theory that tended to stick with me a lot was the idea that COVID was a weapon of bioterrorism. And to counter that, I actually have book suggestions. One moment, please.
Oh, okay.
I've heard this one a lot. This is
if you do actually want to check out what bioweapons look like, Plague Wars, the terrifying reality of biological warfare, by Tom Mangold and Jeff Goldberg. And I read that backwards, and I hopefully said all that correctly.
You did.
I did.
Good job.
Highly recommend it because it actually does a historical rundown of basically every major bioterror incident or bioweapons incident. And goes into detail about how it's manufactured, how it was done, all this stuff. Also looking into Bioterrorism, Preparedness, Attack, and Response by John D. Blair and Myron Fotler. Very handy because it'll kind of show off why COVID is a terrible bioweapon.
I was going to say, what's the end game for COVID as a weapon?
So the common conspiracy theory for this is that China developed this weapon in the Wuhan Virological Institute, essentially to disrupt economic progress and to weaken, infrastructures all over the world. Which, okay, let's look at that. Let's take it seriously for a moment. So,
I think I threw up in my mouth a little bit, but okay.
No, it's okay. It's okay. My entire specialty was around biological weapons, and I actually enjoy this conspiracy theory because it gets so many things so close but not quite. So let's say that you have a weapon that spreads and it is not differentiating of targets, so it'll hit anything and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Now, say you're China, you have a very large population. You have a very large compacted population. You have a very large compacted population, but you also have two targets that you could hit pretty easily that have both been a thorn in your side for a long time. And these would be the Uyghurs, which are the Chinese Muslim minority, or Hong Kong. Because during this being kicked off, you might have noticed there were some protests.
Mm-hmm.
Would it not make sense to have this be released in either one of those locations? Now, the Uyghur one would be potentially the best option, despite the Hong Kong one having the most bang for your buck, because you could test it relatively quietly, because those concentration camps where they're keeping their individuals, they're pretty isolated. You can contain what's going on pretty easily. You've got a couple 100 miles, I believe, in almost any direction where you're not going to encounter many people who would know anything about any sort of biological weapon testing. And it's very hard to trace, any sort of weapon testing like that via satellite data, for instance. So it'd be clean, it'd be quiet, and you could perfect your recipe. With Hong Kong, what you could do is you hit them hard and fast. You say it's a very, very viral disease, which, to be fair, COVID is. And you quickly suppress the protests in the name of public health. Those are interesting approaches. Now, say you want to go one step further. Say you want to take out entire countries that could be a thorn in your side. Like, say you're kind of tired of how the United States has been treating you. Or maybe the EU, because they didn't give you quite the trade deal you wanted. Now, you have several options. You could go with a highly transmissible disease that either, A, is highly lethal and hits fast and hard, or only targets vulnerable populations that are kind of past their working age, and yeah, it can stress out systems, and yeah, EDs might be overloaded, and yeah, it might cause some issues, but in terms of raw body count, it doesn't devastate a country. It hurts them plenty. It hurts everyone in the country in some way, but it doesn't devastate them.
Not enough to be a militaristic advantage.
Exactly. Because, I've known individuals, I've been an individual who has been a presumptive or guaranteed positive and still continued working. And I'm fairly sure that most people who are virologists who would be working on biological weapons, who have the gumption to do so, they're smart folks. And so are most military leaders who would even consider using what would be considered, a total war type weapon, a strategic weapon, rather. They wouldn't pick the weaker option. They wouldn't pick the option that does less damage, even if they were trying to hide who it was from. Because, and here's the best part, they wouldn't need to. if it was a biological weapon, there would be no need to hide who did it, because end of the day, it would either be effective enough for it to work, or be ineffective enough to be plausible deniability. COVID isn't either of these. COVID is in terms of a weapon, laughable. It's a devastating disease. It's a devastating virus. It's clever. It's a beautiful organism. It truly is.
It was designed more to hurt families than to hurt any country's economy or infrastructure.
Well, that's the thing. It wasn't designed.
I know, that's my point.
It's a beautiful, it's a beautiful organism doing what organisms do.
Mm-hmm.
It replicates, it spreads, it continues to gain more territory, and it is beautiful. It is quite possibly
one
the
of the
most
points
elegant virus.
One of the points I like to bring up is we consider ourselves to be elevated on the evolutionary tree, because we are the product of all of that. We are what everything that got cut away and every branch of that tree that died and went extinct. We're here. We survived it all. We have, we've ridden out that thing. So we think it makes us special. But like you said, it's special in the way nature is special. It found its place. It found its in through the door, and it's the way it spreads and the way it perfectly, hides just enough to spread enough before we even realize we're positive with it. Like nature finds a way. It's a perfect example of that. It's like you think if the virus was sentient, it would think it was pretty special. It's more well adapted than so many other like it.
Yeah,
but also natural selection hasn't been a thing for like hundreds of years for humans.
Well, that's a discussion for another time.
But anyways, I was saying.
I mostly agree.
I know.
But I was saying all that though to say this, that as an organism, it's beautiful and well crafted and well, it has gone down the line it needs to go down to do what it needs to do, which is spread and do great things. But it's also gone away from, severity in some cases and some mutations. Mm-hmm. As a weapon, it's laughable. It's a joke. It wouldn't even count. Like, what keeps me up at night? What genuinely keeps me up at night in terms of fear? What? Weaponized flu. If someone could make a flu virus that was more pathogenic just by a little bit, just by a tiny bit, and more lethal by just a couple of %, that would be game over, dude. We would be screwed. This would be a dry run. This would be hilariously small in terms of consequence in regards to that. Again, not to say that this is not a serious thing. It very much is, because it's been pushing our emergency departments to its limits. It's been pushing most of our healthcare workers to their limits. They're both mentally and physically. Like, it's not only that they have scars, literal scars from the mask they've had to wear for hours and days on end. It's not that, even analysts like me, my longest shift this year was 31 hours straight. It's not just that. It's also that mental strain of, nurses having to deal with patients who don't believe they're infected with COVID, dying from COVID, and their last breath is something of anger and vitriol towards the people treating them, because I can't be dying because this isn't real. That's all it's very insidious. Real.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it sucks, but it's not a weapon. It's the only weapon that we're seeing is misinformation. The only weapon that we're seeing is that, is our own nature, our own ignorance, and ignorance not in the true ignorance way, but in the willful, vitriolic kind of ignorance that only comes around when
because something's inconvenient, so we choose not to believe it.
Yeah, that's the weapon. And people have been saying, oh, well, this might be a weapon, no
I'm so angry. Off topic, sorry. I'm so angry at Al Gore for stealing the term inconvenient truth.
Yeah, and the last bit of it, though, for all of this is that the COVID wasn't the weapon, but it provided a strategic advantage in that, people in other countries and ourselves are very opportunistic. We'll take advantage of whatever situation happens to befall us and use it. An example I like to use is that China's lockdown guidance, it did hit Hong Kong first. It said, hey, don't go out in the streets, Hong Kong, or we will hammer down on you. They didn't do that for Wuhan first. Their guidance wasn't there first. It was their second. And we can say a lot about the United States and how we handled protests in different ways. Mm-hmm. Certain anti-mask protests were able to make it into certain governors' mansions without much of an issue. While peaceful protests...
That could be a whole... a whole thing.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, we could have a whole episode on just the protests from this summer, quite frankly.
Oh, easily. There's an entire series that could be done of those. Because there's so much to unravel there, and there's so much. And the fact of the matter is, none of us here are going to be able to address that in any real way, because, we may have struggled in different ways, but it's not that experience, and really, I don't think it's our place to talk about it that often.
Yeah, that's fair. Certainly not without, someone of your stature, but of that community.
Yeah, someone of that community who would know the situation in a much more intimate way than I do, because I basically latched on as a bystander of, oh, hey, people might need help, let me go. I wasn't invited, I wasn't told to go, none of that. And
right.
It's not my place to speak on it, I guess.
Well, what you've talked about with we'll take advantage of whatever befalls us is a perfect. I wanted to go back to when you were talking about the conspiracy theory stuff real fast, because for me, the most important thing, I agree with everything you said. I think most of the speculation that we're making about, whether it would make a good weapon or not, I think that's a really good point to make. But the bottom line is, for me at least, the evidence has to be there before I believe something. You raise your standards of evidence before you believe something. That's how you defeat conspiracy theories. Could it be true? Sure. Do you have any proof or any reason to think it's true? If you don't have any sort of empirical reason to think it's true, then you either have to set aside your belief right now and use "I don't know" as an acceptable answer, or you have to start believing all sorts of conspiracy theories. You have to start believing a ton of them.
There is one point that the people who believed in this conspiracy theory did have that was an interesting observation. It was incorrect, but it was very interesting. Was that, oh, well, if this wasn't a weapon and if it wasn't created in the Wuhan Virological Institute, how did we get the RNA sequence so fast? Which, that's actually a fairly good point. It takes some time usually to be able to do that.
Releasing a weapon and then also giving everyone the sequence right off the bat doesn't make any sense.
Exactly. It gives you a defined timetable in which your attack has to end. And yes, it gives you more plausible deniability, but it also weakens the effect to the point of it not being worth the risk.
Yeah,
it's that cost benefit. There's a system of thinking called PMEZP, which I'll link to as well, where it's essentially kind of a way to catalog intelligence on a target or on yourself if you're trying to be defensive. And it just every country has a variant of it, and in terms of a cost-benefit analysis, there'd be no point. There wouldn't. And it was just a fact that, we've had so much experience with coronaviruses in the past of different kinds, canine coronavirus, MERS, SARS, all these other kinds, that we kind of get the hang of it. And also doing an RT-PCR isn't the hardest thing in the world to do. And, having a virological institute literally like 2 miles away from where the epicenter of the outbreak happened is also kind of handy. It makes sure your samples are pretty fresh. Yeah, but it was an interesting observation to see that they would take that route, because that does, to a layperson, to a person who doesn't know much of this, that does sound reasonable. It does sound like something's a little fishy about that.
And that's the beauty of things like, I love Ancient Aliens for this. It's fascinating to me. I mean, I love / hate Ancient Aliens, but I love the way that they just ask every question, and it sounds plausible if you have no idea, of any of the facts. Like,
I think
could this device, this thing we found, be the muffler off of their ancient rice burner spaceships that they used to fly around with?
I actually think I've been exposed to what I think is probably the final iteration of the theory as far as COVID being a weapon, which is that COVID was a weapon and somebody fucked up and it got out before they were done perfecting it.
So
sorry.
But that conspiracy theory would just apply to anything that came out.
Right. I think that's literally the last step before you have to go, wait a minute, I'm super wrong.
So it's funny you mention that, because there's actually, and this is going a little bit into crazy town and eccentricity town, but there is a virologist that I have spoken to, like, at length for a long time, and his big deal was, oh, well, it isn't a weapon, but it was absolutely created in Wuhan Virological Institute because they were messing around trying to create a coronavirus vaccine, and they had it in like a biosafety level 2 lab, and somebody just had it on their lab coat, and it spread and started out that way, where it's like it wasn't even a weapon, it was just manufactured. I'm like, really? You got much to back that up And he was like, well, the sequence
I
can't
might
quit.
have actually heard that one too.
Yeah, and like...
Like it just got out on somebody's lab coat.
Yeah, and like, you know, at the time I heard it, was it, you know, possible in some sort of way?
Maybe.
Do I currently believe it? You know,
That's the thing.
Right.
Just because you can't prove something wrong doesn't make it true or give you reason to believe it.
Right.
Yeah, and I mean,
And I
admittedly,
think that's a really big. That's something we're probably going to hammer on.
The default
most
position
episodes,
has to
quite
be
frankly.
a lack of belief, or you just have to believe
Right,
all
but
of it without any evidence.
Yeah, without proof, the default position has to be.
Yeah, and
maybe?
that's one thing I'm going to harp on this probably in many, many episodes, but lack of belief is not the same as disbelief. So just because I don't believe in your pet conspiracy theory doesn't
Right
mean
there.
I can prove that it's wrong or am even making the positive claim that it is in fact wrong. It just means that I don't believe it until you meet
Right, well, and I
my
think-
standards of evidence.
And a lot of it comes down to just simple application of Occam's razor.
Also, real quick, as a quick tangent, I'm going to cut it out of the show, so it's not a big deal, but I wanted to apologize. Apparently, the term rice burner is racist, so...
yeah, I was gonna
super
bring that up.
racist.
Don't use that
I
word.
didn't
Since
even...
we're-
It's one of those things that's
Since we're
ingrained...
doing that-
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Since we're doing that briefly, way early on in the show, somebody used the term lizard people.
That was my...
That's definitely okay.
That may have been me.
That's definitely actually anti-Semitic. Did not know until I
It's okay.
posted a lizard people meme.
I was gonna bring that up and cut it out as well.
Yeah.
But okay, so this is a good thing though, and I maybe even leave this in the show because
I think you
this
should
is-
leave that because
this
call
is
outs need to
something.
happen.
Well, this
You
is
need
something
to
that's
get your friends out.
okay. Hold on, listen.
ahead, sorry.
This is something that's ingrained in language that I didn't even realize it until Micah made a face. He's like, he even mouthed what I said, and I was like, wait a minute. I realized what I just said is a weird term, but I've always just used it because my dad used it when talking about those little Japanese streetcars. But I never made the connection
100%.
until just now, and I googled it. Sure enough, motor vehicle, especially motorcycle, manufactured by a Japanese company, and I'm like, well, shit. So,
Yep.
but yeah, so like
100%.
I think this is good. This is what being politically correct is about. It's not about like, oh, I have to walk on eggshells or anything. I don't think any of you thought, I don't think none of us thought Micah was trying to be anti-Semitic. No one of you thought I was trying to be
Absolutely not.
racist or anything. It's just important to be aware of the things you're saying, and
Yeah,
that's a good
know
example.
the origin of the phrase, and if it's a problem, maybe just don't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like my father-in-law.
I didn't know that lizard people was a thing until I think it was the first day of Hanukkah. The Jewish creators on TikTok had a Jewish blackout, and they were talking about it, and they specifically brought up wooden doors and lizard people as two of the most anti-Semitic things that are talked about. I'll have to find the
Yeah,
TikTok. I saved them.
All I know is I posted a meme a few months back. This is new. This is fairly new information to me as well. It's kind of why I feel compelled to share it with others. And that I posted a meme a while back that referenced lizard people, and one of my Jewish friends sent me a direct message, was like, hey, that's an anti-Semitic thing. I promptly deleted it and was like, oh, my bad.
And this is where a lot, the knee-jerk reaction is to feel attacked, but really all you're doing in that situation, if it's an amicable exchange where someone shines a spotlight on something and you say, oh, I didn't realize it could be taken that way, you're just being courteous to people that you might offend. That's it. It's not that you're being chastised or chased off or your freedom of speech is being violated, which is how so many people, they get corrected when they use a wrong pronoun or something. They think they're the victim. And it's just an important distinction to make. So I just wanted to call that out and say I realized that I screwed up. It's like there was a time I was at my in-laws' house and my father-in-law was behind the TV trying to get the Apple TV. He has one HDMI cable and he switches
Oh,
it
no.
between the Apple TV and the VCR all the time. Yes, he has a VCR, and
Yes, wait, they made VCRs
it's
that
like
have
a combo
HDMI
thing.
out?
Actually, they might not have it anymore, but anyway. But okay, so what I was gonna say is he gets really frustrated when he has to do this stuff, and he's behind the TV set, messing around with stuff, and oh gosh dang it, cotton picking thing, and I was like, what? But he didn't know what he was saying. It's a phrase that he clearly,
I've
got
heard
from
the phrase before, and yeah, but like it's clearly in context, like, oh no.
Yeah, and in the case of my father-in-law, I felt like it would fall on deaf ears to even call attention to it. So, plus it's not like he interacts with the public at large or anything. But if it was one of you guys, I'd have said, let's think about that.
Right, absolutely.
And for my piece, I do also want to apologize. And this is not an excuse; it's an explanation. The reason why I knee-jerk to like lizard Illuminati thing is because I listen to a podcast quite often called Time Suck, which I think actually would complement this one quite well. It deals in a lot in critical thinking and looking at historical events and stuff like that. And whenever he's particularly mocking people who believe in very far-fetched things, he'll like make reference to being part of the lizard Illuminati or something like that. So that's where I was carrying it from. I had no idea it had other context. And
you and I are both ignorant about the origin, so you're not alone.
And that's before I was informed about it. That's the context I came from as well. That it was a sarcastic thing that you used when it was just like, this idea is so very ridiculous that I don't even want to give it the time of day, you lizard person.
Yeah.
Also, on that note, though,
but like that's not really what it is. That was my perception, and I was wrong.
Okay. On that note, though, I did kind of want to take this as another learning moment. And what's the thing with wooden doors? Because I don't know.
Actually, don't know. That's Dakota. Do you have what is the thing with that?
I'm gonna go find the TikToks. I don't know specifically what the origin is, but I know that wooden doors was brought up a few times. But I'll go find the TikToks and share them in the chat with you guys.
Cool. Okay, yeah, because I've never heard that before, and I was like,
I didn't either. And I never heard of lizard people either until that day, and I was like, oh.
I keep saying this, but I definitely want to have a show on political correctness and my view of it, because I feel like it's a black and white thing that everyone has going on, and I feel like it's to the extent that we're just trying to be amicable to people around us and be courteous and respectful. Like, if we were going to spend all night tiptoeing around trying to find the words to say what we're trying to say, then sure, maybe we've gone too far. But
the wooden door thing actually appears to be very recent.
oh,
So most of the stories I'm pulling up here are from October of 2019.
Oh, okay.
Where a shooter in Germany attempted to break into a synagogue on Yom Kippur, where it would have been packed, of course.
Yeah.
And a wooden door. It was a solid, dark wooden door that prevented the shooter from entering, and it held, like, I found pictures of, actually, like, the door with bullet holes in it.
Oh.
That held.
Wow. Okay, I'm not sure how that connects to any... Well, okay, never mind. I guess it isn't my place to even really worry about that too much.
Right. I mean, like...
We can continue to talk about... Let's get the recording back on. So let's at least... I think it's time to wrap it up. We've been going for over...
Yeah, we've been going
now.
2.5 hours now. So.
Yep. So I just wanted to close out, and I'm going to give you guys a chance to say something before we go too, but I just wanted to close out with that I really appreciate having you on, Micah. And it was awesome to be able to listen to you talk about stuff about the virus from an informed perspective, because I don't get that very often, even as somebody
Yeah.
who tries to pay attention to that stuff. You know, it's like I'm not going to sit and read all the white papers and everything. I might read one or something like that. But like you said, paywalls and time and that, and it's not my field. So, you know, even when I do read stuff like that, I can misinterpret it. So it's nice to have somebody who knows what they're talking about be able to share that information with us and share their experiences. So thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it.
No, of course.
And then if you guys have anything else you want to say, Dan, Dakota, Micah, if you have anything else to add, feel free.
No, I think you summed my thoughts up pretty well. I definitely appreciate having someone who approaches an expert from my perspective, you know, as a layman, at least.
For sure.
Yeah.
Dakota, do you have anything else you want to say before we carry us out? She might be busy with the kiddo.
No, I'm fine. I didn't have anything else to add.
Okay. Awesome. Well, let's go ahead and close it out. If you want to be on in the future, Micah, I'm sure we'll definitely be able to fit you in. But for now,
absolutely,
since we're on 2.5 hours, I'm going to go ahead and end it. I already have a lot of editing to do. So thanks for watching, guys.
Add one more thing.
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
I do just want to reiterate again, if people do want to seek information, be sure to check their state or local Department of Health website, CDC, WHO.int. You know, your local your government sources and international sources tend to be pretty spot on. And when in doubt, if you see conflicting information on those sites, go with the safer option of the two, which should be kind of a common sense measure. And just be safe and take care of each other.
Very well. Yes, definitely. Please take care
of each other, please.
Somehow this, you know, the walls feel like they're closing in on me with everyone around me getting it. I feel like I'm going to get it right before I get the vaccine, you know? It's like, so yes, please be respectful, everybody. You know, if you have 5 different conspiracy theories in your head that might be plausible, just ask yourself one question. Could you be wrong? Could you be wrong? Is it so hard to wear a paper mask? Is it so hard to social distance? You know, just care about each other. What would Jesus do?